Jason Rantz, welcome back to Undivided.
Thank you so much for having me. Appreciate it.
World's greatest friend delaying his book tour for my wedding.
It's true.
Are you actually
I
delaying it for my
decided to push
wedding?
it.
Or do you?
Yes, I 100% delayed it. I was going to leave on Friday night, and then we pushed it to early Sunday morning.
That is so nice. I seem
I
to
know. That's my
recall.
gift to you.
Wow, wow, yes. Well, your presence is a gift. So, yes, I do appreciate
Agreed.
that. Well, we'll talk about the book coming up. But since I have you here, I've got to talk to you about some of the news that's happening because there's just so much of it. The Seattle City Council yesterday passed this, watered down version of a drug possession ordinance. Do you think it's going to make a difference?
No, it's not going to make any difference whatsoever. Now, it is a step in the right direction. It's sending a message, at least, that we're not just going to accept open air drug use. And I certainly give them credit for that because I know that particularly Lisa Herbold is in a position where she probably didn't want to have to tick off anyone in the far right or far left crowd. And I'm not going to give any credit to Dan Strauss or Andrew Lewis. We're only doing this for political purposes. But at the end of the day, you've got a few problems. Number one, it's still guaranteed pre-diversion when that's not going to work for a lot of people. And when you decide to do that on someone we know it's not going to work on, you're just giving them more time to get into a fatal overdose. Number two, once you actually do get to the point of being able to make an arrest, we don't have enough cops to do any of this work. So to think that all of a sudden something's going to change dramatically is just naive. Good first step, but only a first step.
And when you talk about, the way that they changed it, which is essentially that not only does this person have to be using drugs in the open or possessing drugs illegally, but also have to be a danger to others. Do we really know what that threshold is?
No, we don't. And let's be clear, there are parts of this that still rely on policies that have yet to be written. An executive order from the mayor that hasn't actually yet been really written. Maybe there's an outline somewhere, but that's about it. So this idea that you have to be a threat to others, how do you determine that? I would argue that if you're someone who's coming off of a high and you're mentally ill, that makes you inherently a threat. Do we have to wait until someone assaults someone else? So it is ludicrous. And again, at the end of the day, no matter what an officer ends up doing, there's going to be extra scrutiny in either direction. They're either going to blame the officer for not getting involved soon enough because of their own rules, or the opposite. You got involved too soon. This is criminalizing addiction from people who don't care about the folks who are suffering. Let's be clear. The folks who showed up yesterday at the meeting and were yelling all this invective towards the council, they do not care. These are the radical left activists that I write about in my book, What's Killing America. They are not interested in policies that actually help everyone. They are driven purely by their ideology, and they are killing people. So it was ironic for them to scream, blood on your hands. No, quite the opposite.
Well, yeah, that's what we played a clip earlier in the show of one of them yelling, people
Yep.
are going to die. And I thought, people are already dying at record numbers from overdoses. What do you mean people are going to die? Just on the police front, it seems like it's an unwinnable situation for police when it comes to them having to make some discretionary call about whether to arrest people for this. Have you heard from any officers? Because I imagine officers will just not enforce the ordinance.
I mean, most officers that I've spoken to specifically about this, they say it's not going to do anything. We're still not going to really be able to police. There's still too many other crimes going on that are violent in nature that demand an immediate response. And so the idea that they're going to be able to proactively police in downtown Seattle is just ludicrous. Now, will the city, for maybe a month after it goes into effect, do some priority sweeps within the maybe just to send a message, just to make a point, and again step in the right direction, but that's not going to be sustained. Anyone who's gone to downtown Seattle, you can tell it's already starting to creep back to where it was when we had to do that big old whatever they were calling their sweep several months ago at the corner of Third and Pine. It's just we're headed back in that same direction because we don't really have a plan. The mayor loves to talk about, my office is working on a plan. Oh, don't worry. My office is hard at work on a plan. We're going to get you that plan in a couple of weeks. Please don't follow up on that, and hopefully you'll forget. And then the media generally doesn't follow up. Not everyone. Some in the media actually are doing, I think, a really good job on this in more of the corporate media world. I think Jeremy Harris, for example, at Como, I think is doing a really, really good job. But we need more people like that to actually step forward, because it can't just be you and I doing this. We need some other support.
Yeah, and I'll give credit to Jonathan Cho as well, who's been out
Cho
there
is doing great.
documenting all this. One other topical story. You were the first to break news of the existence of a body camera video from a Seattle police officer who was called to the scene to help investigate this fatal collision where a police officer earlier this year struck and killed a college student on his way to an emergency call. Just to set it up for people who aren't familiar with the context, this officer, Officer Otterer, is also the vice president of the Seattle Police Union. So it's basically a body camera video that shows him, or, you can hear him on the phone with the president of the police union. And he said some stuff that comes across as very heartless when it comes to what happened to this young woman.
But she is dead. No, it's a regular person. Yeah. Yeah, just write a check. Just, yeah, $11,000. She was 26 anyway. She had limited value. So
you initially broke the story based on a complaint he kind of filed against himself. So it was really from his perspective, believing the phone call was taken out of context. Now, having seen the video, who do you believe?
Oh, I still believe him. I mean, he's very clearly responding to something. And I do think it matches up with the way people generally have conversations when mocking other people who are dismissing the value of life. There's no indication in that video that he was personally talking about his stance. You can disagree with how he joked about it or how he mocked the lawyers at the city level. I think that is totally appropriate, and that's on him for accidentally having his body camera on. But I'm not going to pretend that he was personally making these judgments and mocking her, because he very clearly was not, based on that video. There is this general misunderstanding for anyone who works as a first responder, and frankly, anyone who works in the media, because these kinds of conversations that taken out of context will sound really bad. You have to compartmentalize. You can't treat every single incident where someone is dead taking it so personally that you're not able to do your job and cope emotionally with all of this trauma around you. And if that sounds like an excuse for some folks, okay, fine. And then it's an excuse for some folks. Talk to doctors, talk to prosecutors, talk to others who work around trauma all the time. This is one of the ways that they cope. It might be politically incorrect. You might not like it. And certainly we don't want it to happen all the time, certainly not in public. But making a joke about lawyers who are, in fact, getting together in a room trying to place a lower value on the victim's life so they don't have to pay any money out or as much money as they otherwise should. That's what's going on right now. If you want to defend that practice, go for it. But don't just go after cops. And let's be clear about some of the activism that we've seen on the street. There are some of it that is done in good faith. There's a lot of it that is not. These are the people from the defund movement and the abolitionist movement. These are Shama Sawant lunatics who are out there talking about how this is actually capitalism at fault. This is colonialism at fault. We have to defund the police and abolish. Those people don't really care about the victim. And now you throw in this added piece that we're now going to pretend that Dan Otterer was mocking this victim because she's Indian, which he did not know. He did not know anything about her, including a name. He only knew an age, which he ended up getting wrong, by the way, and gender. That's it. That's all he knew. He wasn't actually at the scene either, which people seem to think that he was. So that all of a sudden we're now pretending that this is about ethnicity or race and xenophobia. I mean, you can tell where these people are coming from, and it's not the best interest of the community. It's because they hate cops.
Yeah, I agree with you on some of that for sure. I mean, I think a lot of activists they'll look for any opportunity to try to go out and spread hatred for police. I just have a hard time, though, with how definitive that you are about what the video shows, because I don't know what's being said on the other side of that phone call. I mean, doesn't your interpretation of it mean that you have to take the president of the guild and the vice president of the guild at their word about what was being said?
Well, yes, in part, for sure. The same way that folks on the other side are assuming that it was 100% incorrect. Yeah. We all have our viewpoints. We all have our biases. There's no I don't hide the fact that I'm pro-cop. And I think part of the reason why maybe I'm perceived as being too hardcore on this particular story is because I understand that there are 99% of the media and the activist class are always going to frame things against police officers. I'm not okay with that. I think officers do tremendous work in this city, despite working in really, really poor communities with poor support. So I'm going to support them unless I think that did something egregious. And I don't think there was any ill intent here. Do I think it's a bad look? 100% it is a bad look. And again, he says it in his own complaint letter and this rapid adjudication. Let's also not pretend that the way that this story even got out there doesn't play a role in the intent of the framing. This was leaked. It was intentionally leaked. There was a reporter at the Times who put in a very specific public disclosure request after this got to OPA. And I've talked to two people already, two sources who say OPA gave it to the CPC. He told me himself, Gino Betts, the head of OPA, that he didn't tell me directly. When I asked him, okay, did you talk to anyone with CPC? Well, I can't get into that. He's the one who put it out there according to my sources. I think that was done with intent.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of motivations, like you said, a lot of bias going around. I mean, I just have a hard time forming a strong opinion about the story beyond that sounds really bad, because I just don't, unless Mike Solon is on the record, the president of the Guild, saying, here's exactly what I was saying on the other side of that phone call, then I just can't form an opinion about whether it was, whether he had ill intent or, like he said, a bad heart.
Yeah, and I think it's clear because he's the one who put out the statement last week that included the rapid adjudication complaint that Otterer sent out. I'm going to assume that if that wasn't an accurate reflection of the phone call, he probably would not have put that out in the way that he did. We'll get that document. I don't know if he's done his interview yet with OP. I'm assuming he has, or if he hasn't, it's going to be relatively quickly. That information will come out. I do think at the end of the day, it's important for the context to be considered. How you come to a conclusion, you or anybody else, it's on you guys, right? Everyone is entitled to their own view. I just want to make sure that at least the context is out there. And I do think that's a part of the story that's important.
Yeah. So let's talk about your book, What's Killing America? Tuesday, it's officially out on Tuesday.
It is officially out on Tuesday. It's still available, obviously, for pre-order. So depending on where you buy it, it means you'll get it actually on Tuesday.
Yeah. So make the pitch to people as to why they should pick it up.
Well, they should pick it up because, unfortunately, there's a lot of things that are happening right now all across the country that folks don't even recognize. They don't realize. They certainly know that something's wrong, but they don't know what's to blame, what's behind it. And part of the reason why I wrote this book was that looking city to city, there are themes. It's virtually the same policies that are responsible, I think, for an increase in crime, homelessness, drugs. Certainly when it comes to the migrant crisis, this is due to policy. On the other hand, housing, transportation, what's going on in schools, a lot of the problems are due to policy. And unless people connect the dots, you're never really going to be able to pull some of that back. I give credit to some local media, but overall, across the country, I think local media doesn't do a very good job of connecting dots. They're never going to say, hey, this piece of legislation championed by this Democrat, they're the ones responsible for it. And if you don't know that, you don't know that. I can go right now and ask someone, what is harm reduction? What is housing first? Now, these are two policies, two strategies that are being implemented that are responsible for the drug crisis and the homelessness crisis. No one knows that. People don't know what even that means. And if they are pitched it on paper, it sounds meaningful. It sounds like it could work, but in practice, it doesn't. And so I take people through issue by issue all across the country so that they can actually get a better understanding of what's going on, the motivation behind it, and then most importantly, what works and how do we start winning arguments to make these kinds of changes?
Yeah, and I think that's what's critical is really saying, okay, we see that some of these cities are absolutely dying themselves and as a result, killing surrounding areas. But looking at, okay, what can we do? How can we move forward from here? When you look at some of these major cities, I mean, we talk a lot about Seattle, obviously, Portland, San Francisco. Are any of them beyond resuscitating?
I fear San Francisco is beyond resuscitation. I think that maybe it can come back, but it's going to be a very, very long time. I cover in the book that point where even progressives in San Francisco said, okay, this is too much. Enough is enough. They go after Chesa Boudin. They end up going after the school board. But by the time that they really woke up to what was going on, I think it was just too late. And even at the time, they were still getting resistance from media members. They were getting resistance from the activist crowd, people pretending that this group of folks were somehow conservative. There's like 7 conservatives in San Francisco. They had nothing to do with what actually happened as far as the activism goes. But we're seeing the results now. Businesses are continuously pulling out. People are leaving the city of San Francisco. Homelessness and drug use is not actually getting better. And I don't think that can turn things around. Portland is getting awfully close to that. There are parts of Philadelphia, neighborhoods like Kensington, that are getting awfully close to that. And so another motivation for this book is to ensure that we don't see any more San Franciscos. People think that just because they leave a big city that it's not going to come to them. Well, just look anywhere in Washington state and tell me that Seattle-style politics around crime, drug use, and homelessness haven't hit you in Monroe or Puyallup or Bellingham. They very clearly have.
Yeah, in Seattle, as you point out, I mean, not too far behind Portland and San Francisco if their fate if they don't turn things around this November.
Correct.
All right, Jason Rantz, the book is What's Killing America. It's out on Tuesday, available for pre-order now, just about anywhere that you normally buy books. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, and I appreciate everyone who goes out and pre-orders. It's an important part of getting on a bestseller list, because once I get on literally any bestseller list, I'm going to put it on my Tinder profile. So let's step it up, man.
Okay, good. Love it. All right, I'll see you at my wedding on Saturday.
I will see you on Saturday.